But okay, so let's start since you're such a Yankee fan, right? Such a
Yep.
big Yankee fan. Let's start with what happened yesterday in over in New York. Yankees were playing the Twins. Herman was dealing. Domingo German was dealing. He was, I think he had what, like five no hit innings or five perfect innings, whatever it was. He was striking everybody out. Um, and the Twins kind of, went up there and say like, hey, something's not right. This guy is not this good. And, the ball's moving a lot more than normal. Whatever the case was, he felt very similar to like a Joe Musgrove situation against John's Mets last year. Um, you know, we don't have much information other than the umpire told him like, hey, you gotta go wash that off. What's kind of like, what are you guys thoughts on that situation? I know there's been some changes over the last couple of years that they're trying to limit pitchers when it comes to the sticky stuff. Garrett Cole was always kind of like at the top of that conversation, but he really hasn't changed much ever since, like before and after that. But thoughts on the situation there with the sticky stuff with Herman.
Yeah, I think the umps were just trying to protect the integrity, of the game. They're really trying to reinforce the limitations of sticky stuff at the beginning of the year. Spins down across the board to start the year because as 2022 was going on, spin was down at the beginning of the year and over time just kept trailing up and up and up. And by the time the playoffs came around, it had pretty much spiked pre-ban levels, or I guess you shouldn't say ban, but enforcement levels. And so they're doing the same thing this year. They're trying to get spin back down, and Herman was probably the first example we've had all year where they were really trying to see what was going on. But it was just rosin. I think he came out of the bathroom and then had a little shiny situation going on. And so the umpires were immediately skeptical. It was weird though because he got checked when he went out, and the crew chief, I forgot who the crew chief was, he checked him on his way back out to the mound, which they usually don't do that because he wanted to see if he was doing anything suspect in there. But I was watching the game, and Herman was dealing. I think he changed up his pitch mix a little bit, so that had thrown the Twins off, and they were probably frustrated because they had just lit up the Yankees the first two, or really the first game. So they're like, why can't we hit anymore?
Yeah.
But he came out, he was super confused because I don't think he was cheating because I was watching the game, watching the Baseball Savant feed, and I was looking at his spin and by inning, controlling for velocity because as velocity ticks up, so does spin. And his spin wasn't volatile compared to his first two starts. It was pretty even across the board. It did track down after they said to wash his hands, but I mean, you wash your hands get dry. Your hands are less tacky. Like you're not
Love
gonna
that.
be.
What a defense. It's so true. I love
I
that.
mean, it's a data backed
Yeah.
defense. Like you
No,
wash your
with
hands and they get more dry. It gets harder to grip a baseball, especially the MLB balls because they're not really very grippy. I don't know if you've ever held one, but they're intentionally not grippy. And so his spin trailed back down a little bit, but I think so did his curveball velocity. So I think that they mishandled the situation because they stopped him in the first place. They slowed the game down. I think the whole situation lasted almost 10 minutes, like
Yeah.
trying to figure out what he was
yep.
doing. And then Baldelli came out. He was pissed off. He got tossed. Boone had a few words like, "Hey, what's going on here?" I don't know if you saw like them all congregate in front of the dugout. Like, I don't know why so many people were needed for the situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was telling Yayo before. I think it was just a nothing burger. I don't. I think the umps just mishandled it a little bit in the hopes to keep reinforcing this second wave of sticky stuff
And I
enforcement.
think, to your point, the umps kind of have to do something about it before it gets out of control, right? It's kind of like with the pitch clock and the timer. You have to say, hey, it's a ball, or hey, it's a strike, because if you don't follow up on what you're supposed to, then the rules are never going to be implemented, right? Like they're just going to keep doing whatever they're doing. So you got to implement them first so the players and coaches know that, hey, we're for real. We're going to follow up on this. And, maybe that was one thing like, hey, guys, remember to touch on this. John, you have some experience with the sticky situation with the Joe Musgrove. the shiny ears last
Yeah,
year. So
Joe Musgrove was guilty. He'll be a cheater probably for the remainder of his life. However, I do think Herman, it was mishandled. So from what we're seeing, it was rosin. And I don't know that you can put something on the field, say you can touch this in between every single pitch, and then at some point come and say, okay, now you have too much of it. Like it's either legal or it's not legal. Hey, I think you guys are right. MLB mandates their umpires certain things, right? Obviously, this year it's the pitch clock. You don't get away with anything. Bellinger's getting a standing ovation. You call a strike on him. They don't care because that's kind of, rules. They're setting the precedent. And so I think they probably saw something like Esteban said, whether it was the bathroom, whether it was anything. He had some water on his hands. It looks bad. They said, hey, go wash this off. But they did that because they didn't want to make a big deal out of it, I think. And then they got annoyed when he came back out and it looked the same. It's a tough spot for the umpires, but I don't think you can do that. Either he has something that he shouldn't have and you call it right then as you're checking him, coming off the field, or you let it slide the rest of the game. You can't really tell him, hey, I'm giving you a pass right now. Go wash this off and I'm going to check. And if you don't, then you're in trouble. Yeah. I get the reasoning. They didn't want to throw him out right there. Fourth inning, perfect game when he probably really didn't have anything except maybe, whatever it was, clumped up rosin. We don't really know. But I think it was them trying to save the optics of everything. But in doing so, they kind of shot themselves in the foot and made it look a little bit worse because, like you guys said, then there was a whole crowd. I mean, every coach and player was out there. It was a big powwow. So I don't necessarily, and Esteban will know with the spin rates, we saw them go down, and we talked about this a little bit pre-show. I don't know that they went down that much to where, like, it was a very hot tweet showing that they went down, but you looked at one, it was 47. The other one was 100. There's a lot of factors that go into that. Like he says, the game goes on. Does his velocity go down a little bit? Bringing the spin rate down, the weather, all this stuff. So I don't think it was much. I think mainly the umpires kind of mishandled it.
yeah, and he ended up going 6 1/3, striking out career high 11 strikeouts. So I guess maybe he was trying to try something new. Maybe he didn't have it before, and he was like, "Wow, this really worked." So I'm just gonna use a lot since I can use this. Oh my god, But yeah, it's whatever. We don't expect any sort of disciplinary action from baseball or anything like that because he was able to remain in the game, no problems, which is kind of like a big nothing. It really felt like, but it's just very interesting because this may be the first case of many. If people are really, or pitchers are really using stuff, they're probably going to start looking for it. Even though, again, every time they come out, they get their hands checked and stuff. I don't know. It's just weird that it had to wait, for the opposite team to mention something.
One quick last thing that Esteban brought up, I think is true. I don't know that they really care about it in April, right? But there was that trend before where the playoffs came and late September came and people were again back at that point where we were sitting here and saying, oh, everyone figured out how to kind of do this again. Maybe it's not the same way, but everyone's figured it out. Spin rates are up, batters have no chance, and they're probably trying to avoid, something similar happening.